This is having from 0 to n minus 2. This is from 0 to n minus 1. When you subtract, the only survivor is 2 into e of n minus 1 plus 1 over here. From n minus 1 when you subtract. All right. So, you bring this 2 here, and that is minus 2. When you observe, it becomes plus 2. Therefore, this becomes n into En minus n plus 1 into En minus 1 equal to 1. Divide this by n into n plus 1, and when you divide this by n into n plus 1, you get En by n plus 1 minus En minus 1 by n equal to 1 by n into n plus 1. And now you see that there is some kind of a pattern. So, En by n plus 1, the next value is here. So, if you denote by Tn, right, En by n plus 1, the rest of the thing can follow easily. Let T of n equal to En by n plus 1. So, what you see here is nothing but Tn minus Tn minus 1 equal to 1 by n into n plus 1. Well, 1 by n into n plus 1 can be written as 1 by n minus 1 by n plus 1. It is easy to see that this is what it is. Now, you want to find Tn, and after finding Tn, you can multiply by n plus 1 and you can solve the problem. So, first let us find Tn. Now, whenever you see this telescopic sum, Tn minus 1 minus Tn minus 2 equal to 1 by n minus 1 minus 1 by n. Okay. Similarly, T of n minus 1. Am I making any mistake here? Yeah, looks like when I multiplied by n, I forgot to multiply by no, everything is okay. Looks like I made some mistake somewhere. I am now wondering. En by n minus 1 is it takes the value with probability 1 by n. So, this is also right, and you multiply it, and it's a varying cost. I think I missed somewhere some.
N minus 1 and n plus 1.
You have written n plus 1 instead of n minus 1 in the last but one step.
There.
Where?
That left side, last but 1.
Here?
No, sir.
No, there.
No, left hand side.
Column
Previous one.
The previous one.
Yeah.
That is n minus 1.
N minus 1 into e of n minus 1.
Here? No, I have brought this over here.
That is n plus 1.
So it's n minus 1 instead of n plus 1.
It's n minus 1 here? No, this 2 has come here. So, minus n minus 1 minus 2, which is equal to minus of n minus 1 plus 2, which is equal to minus of n plus 1. That's what I have written. No, this is not a problem. somewhere here is where I am missing somewhere, something.
Multiply n plus 1. What is it, n plus 1?
It is, it is this with probability 1 by n. That is also right, and I don't know where is. Let me see. Okay, t of n minus 2 minus t of n minus 3 is 1 by n minus 1 by n minus 2 minus 1 by n minus 1. And when I add all this, okay, and it cancels like this, and t of n equal to, see, I should, what I should have here is not a simple constant, but it should be, it should not cancel like this. It should be, it should be 1 by n plus 1 by n minus 1 plus this kind of a factor. I am missing in my arithmetic somewhere. Let's not waste time on it. Okay, I will correct it, and then tomorrow I will fix it, and then I will probably I should bring a sheet of paper where that is properly written, and then I should do that. I'm sorry about it. This is a real mess. I normally do it on the fly, and somehow I don't know where I missed somewhere something, and then that is what is. So my apologies for this. I would fix it in my next discussion, this one. Okay, the point is this will be log n. That is because we have 1 by n plus 1 by n minus 1 plus 1 of this type. This will be of log n. Therefore, the expected value will turn out to be n log n, order n log n. The essential idea is this. I am right, here is exactly where I have gone wrong. So I will fix it up in my next meeting. Somewhere here I have gone wrong, and then that I need to fix it. Okay?
Professor?
Yeah.
Or else sigma can also be written as integration. Integral of 1 by n equal to log n.
No, this is log n is okay, but I am not getting this. I am getting a constant value. So I get t of n is order n, which is not correct, right? So it's not here. I must get a factor of n somewhere here. See, this is of order 1 by n square. When you take sigma 1 by n square, this will be of constant. When it is n by n into n minus 1, it will be of sigma 1 by n. Sigma 1 by n is log n. And that log n multiplied by with this, you will get n log n. I know what I should get. I am not getting it because I messed up somewhere with certain arithmetic. Okay, so it doesn't matter. There is no need, let's not waste time on that. I will now fix it in my next meeting. Now, what is important is we are the expected value is n log n, of order n log n. If you look at the insertion sort, okay, we can show that the expected value is order n square. For instance, for insertion sort, the way in which we would prove the expected value is as follows. The expected value in insertion sort, what we do is you take an element, and let us take next element is 8, and the next element is let's say 3, then 7, 8, 3. 3 goes all the way up and becomes 3, 7, 8. And if the next element is 9, 9 doesn't move in at all. And if the next element is 6, 3, 7, 8, 9, 6. 6 moves up to this point. This is how you solve. Okay? So what is essentially happening is, if you look at AI, how many steps it will move in? In each stage, what you are doing is, it's an incremental design. For I equal to 2 to n, push AI between A1 to AI minus 1 so that it becomes sorted. But how many stages you are going to push? It all depends on how many items to the left of it are larger than it. None of them are larger, so it is staying here. There are 3 of them are larger, so you push 3 and then this is where you stop. Okay. If the next item is, let's say 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2. All of them are larger. So you have to jump over all the items and then come over here. 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 and so on. Okay. So continuing with our logic, given a permutation of 1 to n, P1, P2, etc. Pn, suppose this is a permutation, how many items are to the left of it and which are larger than that? And that is called the inversion vector. I1, I2, etc. In. This is called inversion vector. So inversion vector is given by the following. Consider any permutation, let's say 7, 3, 2, 9, 6, 5, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I forgot some, 8, okay. 8. Consider this permutation. And what is the inversion vector? Very easy to find. How many elements are to the left of it and to the larger than this? None. How many are to the left and larger? 1. How many to the left and larger? 2. How many to the left and larger? 0. How many to the left and larger? Only 2. How many to the left and larger? 1, 2, 3 and 4. And how many are to the left and larger? All of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. And how many are to the left and larger? Only 1. So this is the inversion vector for this permutation. Every vector has got an inversion vector. So how do you define inversion vector? Ik equal to the cardinality of set of Pj such that Pj is greater than Pk. So Ik is defined for Pk. You should also Pj greater than Pk and J is less than K. J is less than K means Pj is to the left of Pk, it is to the left and it is larger. So how many are to the left and which are larger? Find the cardinality. So cardinality is number of items in the set, and that number defines Ik, and here is the inversion vector. Okay. Now it is very easy to see that the inversion vector is 1, which means they are equal. That means there are factorial n by 2 of zeros and factorial n by 2 of ones. It is very easy to generalize, and here you will have factorial n by k zeros, factorial n by k ones and factorial n by k minus ones. This is what so IKs will be. Alright. Now why we are interested in inversion vector? What is the exact complexity the exact complexity of the algorithm for a given input. Suppose you are trying to work insertion sort. What will be the complexity on this input? The complexity on this input is, as far as the first step is concerned with, there is no movement is needed, therefore it is 0. And when 3 comes, it has to move 1 step, so 1. As far as 2 is concerned with, it has to move 2 steps and it has to stop there. Okay? So, if you look at the number of comparisons you have to do, it is given by this. Therefore, sigma ij, j equal to 1 to n, defines the exact complexity for the input. For each input, now I know. Now I can precisely tell you for this input how many comparison it is going to make. So 3, 5, 8, 12 plus 8, 20. So if you run that algorithm on this input, it is going to take precisely 20 comparisons. Okay. Therefore, I have this, and from this I can get the worst case easily. What is the worst case comparison? Everybody moving 2. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to n minus 1. This is n into n minus 1 by 2. Same as quicksort. So what is the maximum complexity? The maximum complexity is given by the maximum value. Maximum value is attained by the permutation 1, 2, the reverse order. N minus 1, n minus 2, 1. If you take this, this has to move 1 step, this has to move 2 steps, this has to move 3 and so on, and finally you have this. All right. Now, how do you find the average case complexity? So, average case complexity is you have to add all of this and divide by factorial n, because for each input you know this much is the labor. Now, what you have to do is you have to add all of them, because for input 1, okay, for input 1 there is a complexity C1, for input 2 there is a complexity C2, for input n factorial there is a complexity Cn factorial. What is the average? The average of this is add all of this and divide by factorial n. So you have to add all of, each one is a sum of this, and you have to add all of them and divide by factorial n. So one way to visualize this is as follows. Okay. For permutation P1, you have an inversion vector. For permutation P2, you have another inversion vector. P3, there is another inversion vector, and Pn factorial, there is an inversion vector. What is the complexity of this? The complexity of this is adding all of them gives you the complexity of this. Adding all of them gives the complexity of this. Similarly, adding all of this gives you the complexity of this. So what do you want finally? You want to add all of them. Instead of adding all of them that way, now what you can do is the following. You add all this, you add all this, you add all this, and add all this. So what you get here will be same. Okay? In other words, what was suggested is row wise you add and add everything. Instead, I can do the same thing. Column wise let me add and add these entries. Final value will be same. So in a matrix, row wise addition and summing or column wise addition and summing this will be identical. But what is the advantage of my column wise addition? What you will see in the first column? Only 0. So 0 is my first column sum. And what about my column 2? It will have zeros and ones, but how many zeros will be there and how many ones will be there? Factorial n by 2 zeros will be there and factorial n by 2 ones will be there. So it will be factorial n by 2 into 0 plus 1. And what about my column 3? Column 3 will have 0, 1 or 2, but factorial n by 3, zeros will be there, so many ones will be there and so many 2's will be there. Okay? Therefore, if you look at the kth column, how many items will be there in the kth column? In the kth column, factorial n by k, zeros will be there, ones will be there, 2's will be there and k minus 1 will be there. When you add this, you get factorial n by k into k minus 1 by 2. Therefore, this k and this k goes. Therefore, it is equal to factorial n by 2 into k minus 1. So, this is the sum of kth column numbers. This is the sum of kth column numbers. So, what is the sum of first column number and second column number? First column number, put k equal to 1. You see it is 0, right? So, you add all of this. So, column sum equal to factorial n by 2 into k equal to 1, 0 plus 1 plus 2 plus n minus 1. So, 0 plus 1 plus 2 up to n minus 1. This is the nth column sum. This is nothing but n into n into n minus 1 by 2. Okay, n into n minus 1 by 2. So, this is the overall sum. So, first column sum, second column sum, third column sum, all of them you have taken, and when you add it, you get this, and this you must divide by factorial n. So, when you divide by the factorial n, average equal to divide by factorial n, you get n into n minus 1 by 4. Right. The worst case is n into n minus 1 by 2 and the average is n into n minus 1 by 4. No different at all, same. Okay. Now you can compare and see our intuition. See how it was done. Quick sort, insertion sort, worst case, average case. For quick sort also worst case n into n minus 1 by 2, insertion sort is also n into n minus 1. But this is n log n and this is n into n minus 1 by 4. This n log n I have to resolve. I will do the cleanup in my. Huh?
Because there is a summation and n minus 1 and there is a summation of k equal 1 to n.
Yeah, I think one sum I have missed somewhere. I can, instead of backtracking on that and online wasting the time, what I thought was I will have it done on a clean sheet of paper and then reproduce in my next meeting. It will take only 5 minutes. That's all. I just I don't want to lose the continuity and the important thing that I want to say here. That's the reason why I was not harping on it and then backtracking on it and try to fix that. It's not worth it. I can redo it and that is a lot easier and simpler. Okay. So just now we have seen it is n into n minus 1 by 2 and 2. It's very similar. Now, what we have done here is something to the last level of details and then found out everything exactly. Okay? There are only very few occasions in which you will be able to do this kind of exact values. simplification to the last level of detail you will be able to do only if the mathematical functions involved there are very nice ones and you have the formulation which is very simple to do. In most of the situation, you will not be able to get exact value, you will get only certain bounds for them. And that is where you use the so-called big O notation. Okay? So what if I am not able to do everything, all that formulation and other thing, but still I want to have an idea on what is the average case complexity. Okay? In other words, if I have a function t of n, ideally I would like to have this t of n exactly discovered, fixed to the last detail. Let us say t of n equal to 7n log n minus 41n plus 23. Ideally this is the exact complexity and this is what I want, but then very often I may not be able to simplify my analysis, and then I may not be able to get this much, this kind of right. So there is a standard wisdom in mathematics. If you cannot evaluate, estimate. Okay? The greatest wisdom, practical wisdom. If you cannot do something, right, do the next best. If you cannot do the best, do the next best. If you cannot evaluate, estimate. So what I would do is, I would not be, probably if it is easier for me to show t of n is less than or equal to 50 n log n, and if I could do so easily, then I will quickly do that, and I know that it is less than or equal to 50 n log n, therefore I am happy about it. Okay, I have some idea on t of n. This is what, when I do like this, what I say is, I have found out an upper bound. This is an upper bound. This is not the exact value. This is only an estimation. The exact value is something very complex like this. I have no idea what that is. In fact, I did some experimenting, I did many things, but I could get no clue on it. So what I do is, I attempt something like this. Okay? This is called estimation. And when you estimate, what you will do is, you will naturally ignore certain very complex and silly details, and essentially this is what it is, essentially this is what is done, and when you add all of them you get this, therefore it should be less than or equal to this much. So you do the upper bounding, and when you do that, you may sometime get something like t of n is less than or equal to 2n square. This is also true. When this is the exact value, even this is true. It will be less than or equal to 2n square, no doubt, or let's say just 10n square. As now I 2 is 10n square. It is true that t of n is less than or equal to 10n square. If this is the kind of an information you have got, it is mathematically valid. Mathematically this is not to be questioned. If you proved this, as a mathematical exercise you have done a correct job. But it is not giving you the right insight about t of n. Especially when t of n is something like the running time or the complexity of an algorithm. Okay? Getting this kind of a bound is better than getting this kind of a bound. Why we have to do this? Sometime t of n is available only as recurrence equation or something like that, like what I have mentioned, worked out for quicksort, the average case complexity, very complex expression that is available only as recurrence equation. This particular recurrence equation I am able to solve, but not for all algorithms the corresponding recurrence equation is easy to solve. You will not get any clue by looking at those values either. Okay? But you need to have some idea on the Tn. Ideally, I would like to solve Tn and get T of n in closed form. But when that is not possible, I have to get an estimate. When I get an estimate, is it a good estimate or poor estimate? Every upper bound is big O of the function that you are looking for. So this is also a big O and this is also a big O. So how do you say this big O's? Here is the formal definition of big O of this function. Let f of n be a function and g of n is another function. F of n is order of g of n if f of n is less than or equal to some constant times g of n. I have written a very simple for all n greater than or equal to some threshold value n naught and for some constant c which is greater than 0. If this happens, it is called f of n is order of big O. This is called the big O. The O here is big O. Looking at this definition, you can write like this, okay, 7n square plus 8n plus 9 is big O of 5n square plus 3n plus 21. You can write this as big O of n cube. You can write this as big O of 2n cube plus 5n minus 8. You can write like this, you can write like this, you can write in any way you like. As long as this mathematical condition is satisfied, you can write f of n is of order g of n. So you can write like this, you can write like this. Why you can write like this? It is simple. For example, if you consider n equal to 4 or something like that, the constant c equal to 4, this will work. 7n square plus 8n minus plus 9 is always less than or equal to 4 times 2n cube plus 5n minus 8. Because of this relation, okay, with constant c equal to, for all, let us say n greater than or equal to 10. This may be true for all n greater than or equal to 10. Therefore, I can write 7n square plus 8n plus 9 is order of 2n cube plus 5n minus. Mathematically, this is okay because maths doesn't say anything on this. But how are we going to use it? We are going to use it in the following way. Well, first look at the following interesting observation. I can write for any polynomial, if I have, let us say 7n cube plus 9n square plus 10n plus 8, this I can write less than or equal to 7n cube plus 9n cube plus 10n cube plus 8n cube, which is equal to 34n cube. In other words, I can write 7n cube plus 9n square plus 10n plus 8 as order n cube. I can write like this. Why? This function is less than or equal to 34 for all n greater than or equal to 1. This is true. For all n greater than or equal to 1. So, mathematical definition wise, you see that I can write like this. Similarly, 7n square plus 8n plus 9, I can write less than or equal to 24n square. Therefore, I can write this as ON square also. 7n square, this is also true. This is true, and this is true. Everything is true with respect to this definition. Okay? But you see that this function g of n equal to nq is much simpler than the original function. So this is f of n and this is g of n. In general, if f of n equal to a0 plus a1n plus a2n square plus ak n power k, we can write this less than or equal to mod a0 a1 mod ak power n power k, implying that f of n equal to order n power k. We can write like this, f of n equal to order n power k. Therefore, I can write like this 2n cube plus 5n, or I can write this as order n cube. Therefore, 7n square plus 8n plus 9 is order n cube. This is also valid. This is also valid. This is valid. This is valid. All of them are valid. Okay? Mathematically, there is no complaint on any one of them. In general, because of this, everything is valid. So what I want to do is, while this is an upper bound, you see that this upper bound is somewhat tight and closer to the nature of this function. Saying that 7n square is less than or equal to 23n cube, well, it doesn't give much insight or any big information about you, right? So, in the same way, saying this order n cube is of less value, but saying this as order n square takes you much closer to it. The bound is very close. Same like this, 50n log n is very close to t of n, whereas 10n square is an upper bound, but it is not very close, right? It is a weak upper bound. Big O is an upper bound. It could be a weak upper bound, it could be a tight upper bound, right? All big O says is it is an upper bound. It doesn't tell you whether it is a weak upper bound or a tight upper bound. So, in order to represent the nature of the upper bounds, from this observation you see that you can ignore all the lower order terms, you can ignore the constant, and you can express the function in this way, and that gives you a very simple way of expressing the upper bound. So, instead of saying 50n log n, I can say this as order n log n. Instead of saying it as a 10n square, I can say this as order n square. My unknown complexity function, I don't know what it is very weird, I couldn't solve it that way, but I tried to estimate. When I tried to do the estimation, I found that as order n square. Okay? So that gives you an upper bound. But somebody who has done lot more careful analysis said it is order n log n, and now this gives you a better insight. Okay? Therefore, now you see that this is very close to it. This is also an upper bound, this is also an upper bound, but this is a tight upper bound. If I am able to show the following, right, you see the following, look at this, not only upper bound, even lower bound is also something like this. I don't know that function, see Tn is very weird like this, but suppose I am able to show this, T of n is greater than or equal to 2 log n, 2 n log n, and T of n is less than or equal to 50 n log n. That means it is in a band of somewhere in a weird fashion, it is 2 n log n less than or equal to T of n less than or equal to 50 n log n. It is upper bound and lower bound by a similar kind of thing, but for some constants. In this case, you call T of n as theta n log n. The moment you are able to say that T of n is theta n log n, thereafter people will not even ask the exact constant. Okay? What exactly T of n, they may not even be interested. If the moment you say this, you have estimated the nature of the function very accurately. But if you simply say T of n is order n square, people may ask, wait, have you done your math correctly? Have you derived the upper bound? Is the upper bound tight? All right. You work little more and then, no, it doesn't seem to be tight, maybe I can improve it little further. And then you work on it and, no, I could improve it little further. If you keep saying like this, everything that you are getting is only an upper bound. But the moment you say like this, you have estimated the nature of the function very precisely, and it is only between these two bands, right? This and this, the curve is within this. Okay? That is, it is larger than this but smaller than this. But n log n is basically, the n log n determines the way in which T of n is going to behave, but for some constants, constant multiples. So it's only a scaling factor. If you look at the growth rate will be identical. N log n and T of n will have growth rate same. So what do you mean by growth rate? Growth rate is, if you double, okay, how much this will increase. You take, for instance, n square and 7n square. N square and 7n square. You double, suppose n equal to 10. Okay, here you have n square, you have 7n square. N square is 100, 7n square is 700. You double n, suppose n equal to 20. This becomes 400 and this becomes 2800. What happens? This is also increased 4 times. This has also increased 4 times. Whatever is the exact value. If you double, this is becoming 4 times more than that original. So growth rate is roughly of this order. When you double this, that becomes quadrupled. It is quadratic growth rate. The exact function may be something like this. Doesn't matter. As n square gives you the idea on the growth rate, and this 7n square is also going to have the same growth rate. The exact value may be different. Here 700 could have become 2800. For 7n square plus 8n plus 9, something will become something. But if you look at the growth rate, this n square and this will have the same growth rate. In other words, you have observed the characteristic, the asymptotic growth rate. As n becomes larger and larger, the nature of the function is precisely captured when you have T of n estimated via theta. But if T of n is estimated by big O, right, well, it is only an upper bound. This function is like this, your bound is something like this. You know that this is smaller than that, that's all you know. Okay, but you don't have this banded, it is more than this and less than this kind of a information you get only through theta. Okay. Now, how do we use this for analyzing the merit of our complexity of the algorithm? See, on one hand you have mathematics, and on the other hand you have written an algorithm. Okay, and that algorithm is a recursive algorithm, and it has divide and conquer everything. So you have something like t of n equal to twice t of n by 2 plus n, something like this. You have, but you are stuck. I don't know what this recurrence equation is and how do I solve it. And this of course is easy to solve, but suppose you get some recurrence equation. Then what you do is the following: weaken it little bit and then do some trick and get something like t of n is less than or equal to something like 20 n log n. And t of n is the worst case complexity of the algorithm, right? So what you do now is find out a very bad input and assume that you are able to find an input such that the running time on that particular input, because on that particular input, like worst case example, right? Bad example. No, it need not be a worst case example. Just get a bad example. When you get a bad example, you can explicitly count, and suppose you are able to show that running time or runtime or complexity, let's say complexity on bad input is 2n log n. T of n is the worst case complexity. That means it is maximum over all input. In general, it is going to be even more than this. It could be equal or it could be more. So you know that T of n is greater than or equal to 2n log n. Right? This you have proved. And here you have proved this. So what you have proved is 2n log n less than or equal to T of n less than or equal to 20n log n. So you have sandwiched T of n between two quantities which have the same expression, right? Now you have estimated the behavior of the complexity precisely. The growth rate of T of n and growth rate of n log n will be identical. So you say that T of n is theta n log n. They have identical growth rate. I don't know T of n exactly. I don't have it in a closed form formula. I have something and I don't know how to solve it either. Even mathematics may not have enough technique to solve that. Not all differential equations or partial differential equations, or for that matter many of the equations are totally not solved. Only few mathematically elegant and simplifiable things are completely solved. Everything else is not solved. You have to get an estimation. Okay? Suppose the scenario is something like this. You have an algorithm, but with the mathematics that you have known, you could only get T of n is less than or equal to 10n square. And you have also got a bad input which is 2n log n. Then this is what is true. Right? You are not able to think of a really bad input. Maybe there is a still worse input, but it didn't occur to you, or you couldn't guess it, or you have no way of finding it. This is the best you could do. Then that is all you can say. Now you can't say anything about T of n. You can say that the growth rate of T of n is in between n log n and n square. That's all you can say. So you can't put that in theta notation or anything. You can put that in big O notation. Okay. Therefore, when would you say that the running time or the complexity analysis is exactly determined? You say it in the following way. Number one, first get an upper bound. 2, cook up a bad input with a matching expression to the upper bound. When you could do that, then you have sandwiched T of n between two values which have the same growth rate. Therefore, you have determined T of n for all practical purposes. In fact, T of n is theta of g of n, where g of n is identified. So you are hereafter you may not be even interested in exact value of T of n. If T of n is sandwiched like this, okay, then almost everything, any meaningful comment about T of n can be obtained from this. Hence, you don't have to really bother. But how is this done? This is done by estimation. And how is this done? Remember, this is done by cooking up a bad input. This is not done mathematically, right? Because T of n is a worst case complexity. You have complexity on a bad input is something like this. Therefore, T of n must be larger than this. This is how the lower bound for algorithmic complexity functions are determined. If T of n is 2n square plus 8n, I can get a, if I know this, what is a lower bound? N square is a lower bound. N square is less than T of n. This I can find like this. Because T of n is not any algorithm or say it's simply a mathematical function. Yeah, I can find something smaller than this. Why n square? Even 8n is less than T of n. So on looking at this, I could find something which is smaller than T of n. And I can also find something larger than T of n and so on. So if a function is given explicitly, you can play around with it. That is not of importance for us. Okay? With the mathematical definition and with the function, you can play around indefinitely. That is not important to us. What is important to us is use that mathematics to get an idea on the quality of our algorithm. Math should be used as a tool to enhance your understanding. Here is one algorithm, and you have done the complexity analysis. You have set up the recurrence equation and everything, but you do not know the T of n explicitly. Now, how do you get a comment on T of n? Now, work through a bad input, work through arithmetic that gives you an estimation. When these two are matching, you have characterized completely the nature of the algorithm, the nature of the running time complexity. Okay? So that is important. We should completely distinguish between what is done in mathematics and what is needed in the context of algorithms. The biggest confusion is this. The big O notation, theta notation, everything will be introduced as a mathematical tool. They will be illustrated with some nice functions. Okay? And suddenly when that is imposed on the algorithmic analysis and on the insight, this connection will be missing. So there will be a permanent confusion on is the big O means what? Is T of n is O n log n means what? I will tell you what it means now. Suppose you have found out an algorithm. You have found out a recurrence equation. You have got an upper bound of n log n. Right? When you got an upper bound of n log n, all you can say is T of n is order n log n. That's all you can say. It is upper bound by that. Maybe it is the actual value is something like 21n, which you could not solve, and this is all you could say. Right? And when do you say your analysis is tight? If you could also find another example in bad input such that T of n is greater than or equal to, let us say, 2n log n or something like that, then you can say this information and this information together implies now T of n equal to theta n log n. Until both are done, you do not have an exact idea. You may have big gap also. Your upper bound could be n cube, your lower bound could be n square, it is anywhere in between. You don't know what it is like. Even that can happen, right? In that case, the complexity status is not exactly known. I have rough idea, but I don't know exactly what is the complexity of this particular algorithm. That's all you can say. Right? So, know to use mathematics to comment on the quality of the algorithm. Usual mistake is the big O notation will be used to comment that this is the exact complexity. It is not exact complexity. Okay? It is only an upper bound. The proof that it is exact complexity comes by. The reason why this confusion is, if you have proved like this, it is 7 n log n and 15 n log n, this is also order n log n, but until there is a matching lower bound is proved, you don't know what exactly T of n. T of n could be even much less, right? And that is what the confusion is. So, substantiate your comment on the complexity function by both mathematical upper bound and bad inputs labor on the bad input. Both of them must match. Okay? And I would also like to comment here, remove all these best case example, best etc., throw out from your curriculum, and then it is not that it's not fashion or something like that or outdated, it is totally useless, absolutely useless. It doesn't give any insight on anything. Okay? It is purely an academic exercise, okay, on which one this is going to run very fast. This kind of a question is fairly a silly question. It's probably suitable for GRE or something like that rather than anything else. In practice, it makes no sense. Okay? It just doesn't make any sense in the practice. Okay? You have an algorithm. On several inputs, it may take varying amount of time. On some, it may take less, on some, it can take medium, some it can maximum. You can find average, you can find the maximum, right? Knowing on which one it is going to take the least of the time will not be of any help to you. Okay? Because of that, the best case is never even discussed in any of the latest books. So, my recommendation for you is that ignore all the topics related to best case, that doesn't give anything. You have to concentrate on the worst case complexity, you have to concentrate on the mathematical upper bound, and what you have to concentrate is worst case example, worst case input or bad input. It is they which give you the real nature of what can go wrong is given, they are called also hot spots. Okay? So, they will give you lot more information, right? And talking of order for best case will further confuse you. Okay?
It need not be concerned for lower bound.
Which one?
Best case example. Estimate for lower bound.
Estimate, okay. The lower bound, are you talking of, are you talking for the problem or are you talking for the given algorithm? These two are very different. Okay? For insertion sort, what is the minimum and what is the maximum? When you try to look at it, for example, let us take insertion sort. What is the minimum? The minimum is you just make one comparison for each item and then you stay put there. So, if you input the sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, n, first you insert 1, then you insert 2, then you insert 3. So, the complexity is n and that's all. There is nothing this is a minimum. Okay.